Let me give you the main promise here. By the end of this live class, you'll learn how to build a playbook that systematizes your sales process so you can ramp reps faster, have more consistent performance, and scale predictably. That's ultimately why you have a sales playbook. Documents how we do sales here. One of the things you'll hear me say a lot is you want a sales process that's so reliable and measured and effective that you can hire the average salespeople. They can come in, execute on that sales process, and you know they'll hit their number. And then you do whatever you can not to hire average salespeople. You try to hire the best possible salespeople you can. But the process is such an important component. And the sales playbook is a way to document that process and help onboard reps into that process. Quick run through of my background here. My name is Kyle Van Vouris. I've worked with over 80 software and service companies, helping them build a repeatable sales process. I've written 3 Amazon best-selling books. One is on cold outreach. That's called Cold to Committed. The other is on leading sales teams, called the Sales Development Framework. And then the third and most recent is on building a repeatable sales process. That's called 16 Steps to Repeatable Sales. If you type in my name into Amazon, you'll see all of them there. And I've helped our clients sell over 100 million in software and services. About 20%, I think now, roughly, of the clients we've worked with historically have been venture-backed. Since working with us, those companies have gone on to raise over 280 million in mostly venture capital, some private equity in there too. And I've personally trained over 1,000 salespeople. It might even be in the 2,000s. A lot of salespeople. So I've been around the block. I started as an SDR. I was an AE selling. I've run teams. I've been in board meetings with a team that's crushing it. I've also been in board meetings with a team that is not crushing it. I'll let you guess which one was more exciting for me. So I've seen a lot of different parts of the sales process, and I've worked and built so many sales teams. And that gives me a really strong lens that I see this function through. And my goal is to give you as much of the insight as I can to help you build your own. All right. What's the main problem here? Most sales orgs allow the reps they hire to determine if they're successful instead of the process they've developed. I want you to type yes in the chat if you or somebody you know has hired a salesperson and been like, I think they're going to do really, really great. This is the person that I need. And then it didn't turn out very well. It didn't work all that well. Specifically, like they thought the rep was what they needed. And it turns out that the rep didn't quite live up to expectations. Type in yes if you've had that experience. So I'm seeing some yeses here. Darby says yes. Let's see if anybody else comes through. This is very common. Lauren says yes. This is very, very common. We tend to hire and hope, founders at least. Hire sales rep, cross your fingers and hope that they work out. But that's not the approach that I would recommend. Instead, we want to have that process that I talked about earlier. And the sales playbook is one way that we help solidify a process that we intend to have the reps execute on. What I find is a lot of folks think I need to hire a closer or I need to hire the right salesperson, and they don't have the process that that person is going to be doing, and they hope that person brings the process along with them. Here's something I'm going to be very honest with you about. The vast majority of sales organizations are not run well at all. At all. And when you hire somebody, excuse me, whose background is from a sales organization that's not well run, they don't have strong habits. And you're really just hoping that you rolled the dice and you hired somebody who is spectacular. And that's pretty rare. That's pretty rare. And in fact, a lot of times the most spectacular salespeople work at much larger companies. So if you're an earlier stage, it's very tough to compete for that talent. When you have a sales process, you can prove out people hit their number and they're going to make a good living. That's like when you can actually start really scaling a sales organization. It's a process thing. So as you're working to build out your process, you're going to find something that works. You're going to build a sales playbook, and then you're going to hire a sales rep and say, follow this sales playbook. please, for the love of God, follow the sales playbook. That's what you're going to do. And you're going to work with them and hope that, and work with them to actually execute the sales process. And here's the important thing, the reason why. This isn't just so like you're this master wizard salesperson, you're controlling the whole process. That's not really the idea. But the idea is we have a baseline. And then if something isn't working, we can make a tweak to it. And it's not being tweaked in isolation. It's being tweaked together, and you're refining that process over time. And the sales playbook allows you to set that baseline. And as you make tweaks and you refine and it gets better, then you can update the sales playbook, and then you have a new baseline. Okay. So let's talk about the sales playbook template here. I'm going to walk you through an outline or a template that we use to create sales playbooks. And I'll give you this at the end. Side note, please remind me. For those of you who are repeats, sometimes I forget to throw the links at the end. It's a one-man show here. So remind me if I forget. Okay, let's walk through the sales playbook. I'm going to skip over some of the basic stuff like, oh, this is the company's sales playbook, right? But we have an overview. We split our playbook into two main categories. There's the About Us section, which is the who we are, what we do, who we help, and why we win. And then there's the Roadmap to Success, which is our sales process, our buy again strategy, tools to support you, and then our performance culture. You have a little about us, who we are. This is where you put your company values. This is important. I'm not going to try to sell you on company values. You should have them. Then there's an org chart. Our org chart is actually more important than you might think it is, even when you're a smaller company. You want your salespeople to understand who does what. So for example, one of the best salespeople I've ever met, her name's Melissa. I met her selling, she sold a supply chain software company to large enterprises. She was an absolute monster. A deal on average would take 18 months to close. She could close it in 9. Absolutely next level salesperson. No one who I've ever worked with was better at leveraging internal research than Melissa. She was incredible at it. And she knew people in the organization, like no one knew. They're like, what, you talk to that person? She's like, yeah, of course. And it was super critical for her to have this kind of understanding and honestly, internal networking. She was so good at it. And by giving an outline of who does what, who reports to who, what the responsibilities are, and having a really clear org chart, it's very helpful for sales reps, especially when you close more complicated deals where they might have to interface with multiple parts of the organization. I'd actually be curious if you can type into the chat, do you sell to the SMB, the mid-market, or the enterprise? Just let me know which one of those, and I'll come back to that. Okay, cool. I like early on in the sales playbook having a little note from the CEO. Again, this is just like nice to have stuff, but I would put it in there. I think it's nice. What we do. This is where the company mission goes. Okay. I gave you a little framework you can use to create one. If you don't have one, you should have a company mission. I think it's important. Okay. What we do. So these are the products that you sell. Okay. This might be, different software products. It might just be one thing. If you just have one thing that you do, what I generally tell people is if they sell like one software, you could break it down into pieces. So you could be like, this is what we sell. Here are the different components of it. We also cover pricing here. So low, medium, high price. If you have different tiers, if you have different ways of pricing, you put that in there. So I'm looking here. Two of the people who responded said enterprise sales. So they sell to larger organizations. Your pricing probably doesn't look like this. You probably have some complex calculator that you use to develop more of a proposal. Maybe there's a consumption portion of the pricing. So it's a lot more complicated. That's what you're putting here. Okay. If you sell much more transactional sale, then you might look a lot more like this here. Great. Who we help. I'm going to go through this part a bit quickly. In the template I give you, these are hyperlinked. Different templates. I mean, this thing's wild. When you go through, you're gonna be like, geez, there's a lot of stuff in here. Like this here is a tool that we use to really map out a target market, the different verticals, the buyer personas with the markets. And you can use all of these things. You have access to all of it. But this is a screenshot of what one of the pages looks like. So one of the things I really believe strongly is that it's more about the prospect than the product. So I try to spend a lot of times with sales reps better understanding the prospect, their problems. Can I speak their language? That's like really what I want them to be able to do. So we put the ideal client profile. We have something called market mapping that we do. And you can see here, we have these different verticals. And then what's this vertical? How is this vertical defined? What's their unique challenge? Why is your solution a good fit for this vertical specifically? You can see we have these questions, different features of your products, like how do they help solve a vertical specific challenge, just to get a lot of clarity around who the right fit is, what the verticals are. And then there's something similar here that we do on the buyer persona side that is also in the sheet that you'll see. I like to put that really up front. It really helps for onboarding, making sure that somebody fully understands where you win. What segments of the market do you really target? Put a bunch of case studies, testimonials, examples, anything that you have here. That's great. Case studies, all these things are super helpful. If you've been on a sales call before and you've heard a sales rep say like, you know what, we worked with somebody similar. This is a situation that was happening there, and then this is how we helped them solve it. That does a lot. You're like, wow, okay, I feel much more comfortable because that's a company similar to ours that this person has interacted with. It gives the sales rep a lot of authority. So I want to make sure that they have access to all of the different case studies, and they're starting to like really understand how the users feel about using the solution, whether it's a product or a service, by the way. Next, we have why we win. So here's the thing. Some of you feel like you have this really well figured out. And when I say this, I mean a sense of like what your value proposition is, what our differentiators are. Some of you may feel like you have it. I have yet to see a company where when I looked at their value proposition and their differentiators and how they position themselves, I felt like they really had it handled. So in fact, like, why don't you comment in the chat here, like say yes or no if you feel like you have a really strong value proposition, that you understand the value map, so to speak. And what that means is what are the different things that sorry, the dog's barking here. I'm at one of my employees' house. He has 2 dogs. But anyway, what are the value drivers? What's driving the value for your customer? So you'd have like a list of these, like what's the thing that they value the most? What's driving most of the value? That's what you want to have an understanding of. And not a lot of people do. Give me 1 second here, guys. Sorry. Okay, so that was the first section. Next, we're going to go to your roadmap to success. Really, this is laying out goals, expectations, and a clear path to actually achieving their goals. First part of this is our sales process. So you can see I have an inbound and an outbound. You can get real crazy with prospect journeys, and feel free. So if you have a really clear understanding of your sales process and it's, you have a complicated diagram that you've created, put that in here. At the bare minimum, outline the steps. So inbound, download lead magnet, go to conference, book appointment, or receive marketing emails, book a demo, book a sales call. Go through and you list out step by step what's somebody's journey from never hearing about you before to signing and becoming a customer. So at the bare minimum, do that. And that's for inbound and for outbound. So outbound might be cold calling, cold email, whatever you do. Okay. The next thing too is more sales process stuff, specifically around how we manage leads. So what I ask you to do in your sales playbook is have some kind of flow chart of like your different lead statuses. If you're not using lead statuses, you should. If you go on our YouTube channel, I have a whole video on lead status. I forget what it's called, but I think if you type in leads, it'll pop up somewhere. This is what I recommend from a lead status perspective. So just so for those of you who don't know, if you're doing outreach to a lead list, whether it's inbound or outbound lead list, open, they haven't been called at all. Working, calling, but working is called but haven't connected with. Prospect means I've connected with them. Disqualified means I found out that they're not a good fit. Bad data means that the phone number and stuff was wrong. Nurture means we've called them a bunch of times. They're no longer worth us following up with. An open deal means we've actually booked a meeting with them. And you want to outline that here so people understand. We could talk more about it. If you have questions around how you would use lead statuses, I can tell you this here. If you do inbound, if you do any direct outreach, inbound leads or outbound leads where reps are calling, this is one of the most important things that you could be doing. This will prevent your team's performance, or I'll say your team's effectiveness, from decreasing over time. It'll actually make it increase over time. So if you have a question about that, type it in and I'll get to it at the end. And then some more things around sales stages, qualification methodology, discovery guide. So how you run a discovery call, your demo guide, that's your demo script basically, and your CRM setup guide, how we have our CRM set up. I have links to templates for all of these. So if you don't have them built already, you can click on this link, you can use this template, you can build it out. And they're extensive. They're like big guides. So that's all here. You put this in your sales playbook. I have them as bullets. Obviously, most of these are going to be in their own pages, right? So it's really important that you have all this stuff in the sales playbook. And then you have all of your sales messaging. Now, you can keep this in the sales playbook, or you can have it separate. It just depends on how you like to update things. For some folks, they'll put this in like a big spreadsheet that they keep up to date. So then that way they don't have to like go back and update the sales playbook every single time, because sometimes people make copies of sales playbooks or whatever. So they just want to have like more of a central repository for all of their messaging. And I have a template for you to build your messaging sequence. I think it covers more than just outbound, but it definitely covers outbound. These are things like, hey, what do we say when we call lost opportunities to try to reactivate them and book meetings? That's a really big one. Another one here would be your cold call scripts, cold email templates. You do conferences. What does your calls sound like when you call people after conferences? What emails you send leading up to the conference, at the conference, and then after the conference? You put all your messaging in here, and your sequences. And then our buy again strategy. So this is really going post-sale to account management. So we have onboarding here, what the health checks look like, and how do we get renewals. I include this even if the sales reps do not, if they are not involved in renewals, I still include this. I want them to have a good scope of understanding of what the life cycle of a customer looks like leading up to a deal getting closed, and then even beyond. I find it helpful for them to have context into what their roles are and like how they interface with the customers. And of course, if you have them involved in renewals, this is even more important. And then tools to support you. All of the tools that your company uses, CRM, data, dialer. Now, I will say some companies go absolutely berserk with different tools. It drives me nuts. It's funny, like I consider myself like a pretty early adopter, but when it comes to sales tech, I'm actually mostly cutting sales technology more than I'm recommending adding. I want obviously a CRM. That's like you're supposed to have that. I want a data provider, like a ZoomInfo style data provider, which is with as much quality data as I can get. So like whatever the best is, I just overspend on it, just get the best. So data I care a lot about. Recording calls, mandatory. Type yes or no if you're cool recording calls right now. Type yes or no. And then for those of you who are a no, probably don't even want to comment no, because I already made a dramatic statement about it. But type yes or no if you're currently recording all cold calls, calls to inbound leads, all calls in general, as well as demos, proposal reviews, discovery calls, yes or no. Okay, so we're seeing some Lauren, yes, Jen, yes, Nick, no, highly recommended. Nick, I would actually buy a tool to do that today. They're not that expensive. You don't need to go get Gong for $130 a month or whatever it is. Buy whatever. Just get the freaking calls recorded. Luke, you too? Okay, I'm going to flash you on the screen. Luke, please go buy a call recording tool today. I don't even have an affiliate link to give you. This is just what you need to have. If you're using HubSpot, it's built in. It's built in. So make sure that you're using it. You need to listen to discovery calls. You need to listen to demo calls. You have to understand what's going on in the sales process. So that's a mandatory for me. So we said CRM, data provider, and then we said call recording software. That's kind of it. Now, what about a sequencing tool to like send emails and whatever? I'll bundle that in with Dialer. I don't like, this is also a little bit of a controversial opinion. So, if you want to debate me, you can. I don't like SDR sending cold email. Just to be very honest with everybody, I just think it's a waste of their time. A big, big waste of their time, actually. Rarely do I see a company where they're actually, companies I've worked with. Now, granted, like I'm a bit skewed because when somebody's coming to me, things aren't really working all that great. But I've never worked with a company that cold email was like crushing it for them. Never. So already that's a red flag. I know a couple of people who get cold emails to work well, but usually they're doing like these big automation campaigns and they're not really relying on personalization. Generally, the amount of time to personalize based on the reply rate, the numbers are so low, it's just better to have them calling. So for SDRs, for example. So sequencing tools like dialers, I would buy something that does what you need it to do, but don't. Here's a funny example. Someone will come to me and say, hey, I'm hiring, I just hired 2 SDRs. Can you take a look at my sequence? And their sequence will have like LinkedIn, email, and call. I'm like, you just hired 2 SDRs and you're like trying to weave together all these different channels of outreach. Let's just pick one channel, get that going, and then we'll add another channel too, and we'll weave it in later. Like we don't need, like, people just like want to like look cool, like they have all these like sequences and it's amazing how everything works together. It's like I strip all that away and I say, look, you haven't had any success. Guess what? Congratulations, you're just cold calling for the next 2 months until we figure this shit out, and then we can add some other stuff. So just my opinion. Take this and apply to your organization. You know your business is better than I do. This is, I'm just a guy, but I've seen a lot of sales organizations, and that's just my opinion. Okay, cool. So that's a tech stack. I went a little longer on there because I get a lot of questions about tech stacks, and I try to be as lean as possible. I actually find adding different tools slows down performance. Okay, cool. Then onboarding guides. So I have some templates for you for onboarding guides. I include those in the sales playbook, onboarding checklists as well. And then performance culture. This is an important one. What KPIs are you really tracking? What do they mean? What are you holding them accountable to? So you put the metrics here. I put 3. You can put as many as you want. There shouldn't be that many. The idea is like, hey, how many deals did you close? How many meetings did you book? How many calls a day do you make? These are the type of things that you're putting there. And then here's an activity tracker. This is for SDRs. Couple of things. You're looking at a spreadsheet. This is how I track SDR performance. At the end of every day, I expect the SDRs to fill out a sheet. That sheet tells me how many calls they make, how many people answer the phone, how many meetings that they booked. You might be wondering, hey, Kyle, can't I track all of that in the CRM? The answer is yes. Yes, you absolutely could and can and should. You should be tracking this in the CRM. I still want the SDRs manually filling it out. Some people push back on me. They don't listen to this and they just don't require the SDRs to do it. Fine, you can do it that way if you want to. The reason why I like having the SDRs fill it in is because they're typing in these numbers, it makes it real for them. They can see their own metrics. They can see their dial to connect rate one day over the next. They can see their connect to meeting booked rate. They can see, hey, I made 80 calls today. Shoot, I really need to pick up the pace tomorrow to make up for it. I need to be at 100, right? So that's the kind of thing. And you can see I have this set up week by week, and they just keep adding, the rep's name here. They just keep adding numbers to it. So then by the end of the week, it's completely filled out. You can have them do it weekly. I prefer having them do it at the end of every day. It should take no time because these dashboards are in the CRM already. They're just typing it in. It's making it real for them, and it allows you to do some calculations that are a little bit harder when they're not in a spreadsheet. Quota, here's you giving them the quota. There's also a calculator that they can use to figure out like what the quota is, like how the math of the quota happened. I don't give this calculator to the reps. This one here is just for you to try and calculate what quota should be. Okay, you put in all these metrics, it'll spit out what the quota should be. You should use that if you need to figure out what your quota should be. And then there's a performance management section of this too, where it's like, hey, here's what we do to help you with your performance. Maybe you do through a 30, 60, 90-day plan if it's more of like a manager style role. Maybe we're doing quarterly check-ins or we're doing weekly one-on-ones. That should be in this list, but you get the idea. Like you're explaining to them how we are, I wouldn't call it performance management, right? This is our performance culture, right? But just so you know, it's performance management. The idea is like, we're going to be doing one-on-ones every week. We're going to be doing this, that. We have a PIP process here where if you don't hit your number, 2 months in a row, then you get put on a performance improvement plan. And then if you don't hit your performance improvement plan over the next month, there's termination, right? Like you're giving them everything there. And that's it. That's the whole sales playbook. Oh, geez, let me stop sharing here. That's the whole sales playbook. Okay, let me give you a copy before I forget. We're going to move into Q&A here in a minute. Before I do, though, let me give you this here. Please, if you could, fill out this survey. helps me a ton. It helps me a ton, giving me feedback on how to make these better and also what other topics that you guys want me to cover. Let me get sales playbook template. Oh, this is a different one. 1 second. 2.0 is coming out soon. And I say soon, but it's been a lot of work, so it's going to be a little long. And then here's the sales playbook. Another thing for you new folks, if you are curious of what topics we have coming next, like hopefully you felt like this was a good use of your time. You know, we got through all the content in 30 minutes. I'm going to go through Q&A here in a minute. But if you want to see the upcoming classes, we put it on vouris.com/events. I'll give you a link to that too. Go sign up for any of the ones that are coming up. It's mostly always, I do these a lot. Sometimes I'm traveling. Dan will hop in and he usually covers marketing topics. And then, occasionally, like I'll bring a guest or something, but a lot of times it's just me, and this is exactly what to expect. It's like this every single time. Okay, cool. So those are a couple of things. Again, if you could really prioritize doing that survey, it means a lot to me. One of my goals is to get 100% of an audience to do. I got 80% once. I was really impressed, but 100% would be incredible. So if you're not doing it, you're breaking my heart is what you're doing. And you're shattering it into millions of little pieces. I don't know if I'll ever get it back together again. You can prevent that by doing the survey. All right, let's see if any questions came through while I was doing that. Okay, cool. Yeah, a couple. Please dig deeper in the sales process slide lead statuses. Okay, great. Good question. So a couple of things about lead statuses. Like I told you, like we have these lead statuses that, like, let's say we're doing cold outbound. I call an open lead. When a call is logged, it gets moved into working. If a call is logged and call outcome equals connected, that means I connected with the person I was trying to connect with. Therefore, there's somebody who answers the phone. So they go into the prospect lead status. Here's why this is important. Over time, you call through a list, okay? If I had my iPad here, I'd draw it all out for you. But over time, you call through a list. Let's say it's 100 people, just to keep the math simple. 100 people. Let's say you have a 5% dial to connect rate on a cold list, which is common, by the way, and low, but common. That means you make 100 calls. You call those 100 people. You talk to 5 people your first wave of calling. All right, now there's 95 people left in the list. Call that 95 people. Guess what? You are going to connect with 4. All right, we just removed 4. Now we're at 91. Call those 91 people. Guess what? Probably going to be another 4. You get the idea. Like you're whittling down the list. Here's the challenge. In any given list, only a certain percentage of that is even connectable. There's people who just never answer their phone, right? So maybe 30% of the list are people who will ever answer the phone ever. Maybe it's 40%. You know, it depends on the market. Well, as you call through that list, you're removing people who answer the phone. And that means there's a higher density in the original list that's now at 91. There's a higher density of people who never answer the phone. So your dial to connect rate will start dropping. It'll go from 5% to 4.8%, to 4.5%, to 4%, to 3.8%, to 3.2%, to 2.9%. You get the idea. And you crush your dial to connect rate. Well, what happens if I call all of the people who answered the phone, so I connected with them at some point, but they didn't book a meeting? My dial to connect rate becomes 25% because those are phone people. That's the key. So over time, you change the distribution of your activity, the SDRs do in this outbound example, from open leads only and then to working leads, right? So those are ones who we called, but they never answered. Now you start taking a higher percentage of your time and spending it on people who've answered the phone before in the past. And then you'll call like newer leads, you know, some of the leads that haven't answered yet. And then you're going into your connected list, and that helps balance out your dial to connect rate. So that's why we do the lead statuses. It's really important, and it's a really good best practice for. My hair's getting weird. It's a very good best practice for SDRs, but also for you and for your list. So a big mistake I see people make with SDR teams is they give them a Zoom info license and they have them create their own lists. I did not want SDRs creating their own list at all. It's a company asset. You as the organization should create and own the list. Okay, that's lead statuses. By your experience, what is the optimal size for the company sales playbook? Not more than. It doesn't really matter, Nick. If you follow like that template, like it's not going to get that big. But like, sometimes they get big, you know. But these salespeople are just starting, so I think it's important that you have all the information that they need in there. One thing I will say is, nobody gets punished, or it's rare, but nobody really gets punished for having a poor onboarding experience for a sales rep when you're onboarding the sales rep. You get punished 6 months in when that sales rep is struggling and they're like, gosh, this place really sucks. No wonder they suck. They couldn't even onboard sales reps right. You know what? This company's the problem, not me. And then they leave. Or you might not care about that if they're not performing well, but like they might also have a point. You might not actually know what you're doing. Having this kind of clarity in your sales process is really important. But you don't like throw a bunch of useless stuff in there. Make sure it's all useful and like helps them actually do their job well. All right. What are the next steps after writing the whole sales playbook? You start using it with the team. Generally, like you're going to do this when it's more time to hire and onboard, and less if you have reps already. If you already have reps, I would just start putting process together, and you just have a sales process document of like, hey, this is what we found that works. Here's some of the best practices for doing our first call, which might be a discovery. Here's the best practices for doing the demo. Here's our demo script. Just start putting the process together. We find that we want to make sure that we book call 2 within 3 days of call 1, things like that. So you just start capturing some of those best practices, and then you go, you know what? We're doing well. I'm going to hire another 2 sales reps here. Then you start actually putting together a sales playbook. And then after you create that sales playbook, you run it by the existing sales team out, in a case of like an early stage company, get them involved a little bit, I think is good. And then you're like, all right, let's roll this out, meaning hire people and they start using it. So the next steps are really giving it to people and them onboarding it. You also want to use it as a guide to answer questions. So if like a rep has a question, you'd be like, okay, great question. Why don't you go to page 17 of the sales playbook here and let's talk about it. And then you go through that section with them. You don't have to be an asshole and be like, did you look at page 17, you big idiot? Don't do that. But instead you can pull up page 17. So they start getting the sense of like, oh, the sales playbook has all that I seek. Okay, another question from Nick here. When you get a client who wants a playbook, what's the timeline to create, implement playbook from start to the moment you think enough, we've done everything? This is a really hard question to answer because every client that I've worked with is at a different stage of maturity. We generally work with our clients over a 6-month period. By the end of the 6 months, playbook is typically there, but not all of our clients even have a need for like an actual sales playbook. Like we're doing more process document stuff. So it just depends. So what I would recommend doing here is what we end up doing is working with them if they need the sales playbook to actually build it out. And that process, let's say we're like 3 months into engagement, might be when it starts. It might take like 30 to 60 days to put it all together. But we build all these things in isolations over a 6-month period, usually, sometimes quicker. All right. Any other questions here? I'm not seeing any. All right. No more questions. Well, hey, thank you so much. One more promo. Please do my survey. Please. I'm going to put the link to the survey back in here. If you could take the time to fill this out, I'd really, really appreciate it. And then I will see y'all in the next one of these. And I'll be back in my normal environment. So thank you so much. There's a lot you can be doing on a Thursday. You're spending it with me. I really appreciate that. And we'll talk soon. Bye.